My name is Michael Trent. I'm 44 years old. I've lived in Austin, Texas most of my life. And for the last 16 years, I worked at a company I helped build from the ground up. Not as a founder, not as a shareholder, but as something more valuable, the guy who kept the lights on, the guy who brought in deals, the guy whose team generated 60% of the company's revenue year after year. We weren't some tiny startup. We were a multi-million-dollar logistics firm. When you got your Christmas gifts delivered on time, it was likely because of our optimization systems. And I led the entire client acquisition and revenue division. But this story isn't about success. It's about betrayal. And the cold look in the eyes of a man who didn't even know what we did, the new CEO, when he called me into the boardroom. It was a Wednesday, 10:14 a.m. I still remember the coffee stain on my shirt sleeve because I was rushing between meetings. I just closed a contract worth $12.7 million, our biggest client to date. When the internal email came through with the subject line, Boardroom 4B. Now, I thought maybe it was a congratulations. Maybe something formal. A raise. The bonus. Or even a handshake. Instead, I walked into a room with 7 people I'd known for over a decade, and 1 man I didn't. The new CEO. Fresh from Silicon Valley. Someone who thought PowerPoints and buzzwords were the same as results. He didn't even look up from his tablet. Just said, "We're moving in a new direction, Michael. Effective immediately, you're being let go. HR has your exit packet." Just like that. No thank you. No explanation. No recognition for 16 years of work. No mention of the fact that my division paid for the damn chairs they were sitting in. I didn't say anything. Not at first. But when I walked out of that room, something inside me shifted. Not rage. Not tears. Just a deep, surgical calm. Because in that moment, I realized something they didn't. They didn't just fire an employee. They cut out their own heart, and they didn't even know it yet. And what happened next? That part? That's where it gets interesting. I used to think loyalty mattered. That if you gave everything to a company, it would give back. But I was wrong. And before I lost everything, I had one last thing left to lose. Before that boardroom ambush, before the CEO with the plastic smile and hollow words, I thought my life made sense. My days started early. 5:30 a.m. Coffee in one hand, sales report in the other. I wasn't just a manager. I was the guy people called when numbers dropped or deals were on the fence. I was the closer, the stabilizer. At work, I ran a high-performance team, 11 people, hand-picked over the years. Not just coworkers, friends, partners in the grind. People who stayed late when the servers crashed, who traveled across the country on 2 hours of sleep to close deals that barely got noticed by upper management. We made the company millions. And not just once or twice, consistently. And at home? I had peace. I thought I did. I'd been married for 12 years to Rachel. We met through a volunteer program. She was leading a food bank initiative. I was just tagging along with a friend. She had this way of making chaos look calm. We clicked instantly. We had a son, Jacob, who was 9 now, obsessed with space documentaries and had this strange love for broccoli that made other parents jealous. Every Friday night was pizza and movie night. Every Sunday was pancakes and Lego. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. And I believed, with everything in me, that all this meant something. That hard work, consistency, and loyalty were still currencies people valued. But looking back, the signs were there, just quiet, subtle. The new CEO came in like a whisper. A few months before he fired me, there were closed-door meetings. Policy shifts. He started asking weird questions like, do we really need a sales division in-house? Or, what if we outsourced client acquisition? I didn't think much of it. I'd been through 4 leadership changes. Each time, they came in with buzzwords and walked out confused, realizing the company ran because people like me kept the wheels turning. Besides, I was busy. My team was working a high-profile deal with a retail giant, One of those change your life clients. If it closed, our revenue would double next quarter. I was putting in 70-hour weeks, flying coast to coast, taking red ice, missing dinners. And Rachel at first understood. She always had. But lately she seemed distant. Not angry. Not cold. Just withdrawn. She'd say things like, "You're never really here, Mike." Or, "What's the point of building a life if you're not living it?" I'd wave it off. Promise to make time once the deal closed. That was my line. Just a few more weeks and things will settle. But deep down, something was changing. At home. At work. The walls were shifting. I just didn't notice the cracks. One night, I remember sitting at the dinner table. Jacob was showing me a spaceship drawing he made. Rachel was clearing plates. I got a message from the team, client pushback on clause 3.4. I took the call. When I got back, Jacob had gone upstairs. Rachel didn't say a word. Just this look, like she'd already decided something. Like she knew a storm was coming, and I was too busy checking emails to see the sky turning black. Still, I kept pushing forward. I thought, once this deal closes, I'll take a week off. Maybe 2. Reconnect. I didn't know I was running out of time. I thought I had time to fix everything. I thought loyalty at work, love at home, it would all hold. But then, the silence started growing louder. And I began to feel like a guest in my own life. The first time I noticed something off, it wasn't a scream or a scene. It was a silence. You know how you can walk into your own house and just feel the energies changed? The air's different. Like someone vacuumed out the warmth and replaced it with static? That's how it started. Rachel's hugs got shorter. Her goodnights turned into nods. She stopped asking about my day, and when I asked about hers, it was always fine. Not good. Not bad. Just fine. I chalked it up to stress. We were both busy. Life happens. But then there were other things. She started leaving the house more. Random errands that took longer than they should. A new gym membership across town. Late grocery runs, even though our fridge was full. And then one night, I was heading to the kitchen to grab a bottle of water. It was around 11:40 p.m. I saw her phone light up on the coffee table. I didn't mean to look. But the notification popped right there. A preview message. Can't stop thinking about you. Tonight was. It disappeared before I could finish reading. She walked in just seconds later. Picked up the phone like nothing happened. I didn't say a word. Because honestly, I wasn't ready. I didn't want to believe it. I needed to believe this was all in my head. At work, things weren't any better. The CEO, Greg, he started skipping our weekly performance meetings. Suddenly, I wasn't being CC'd on deals I was responsible for. My team was pulling 60% of the company's revenue, and yet, we were being restructured without notice. I overheard a conversation between Greg and the CFO one evening as I walked past the conference room. Something about streamlining operations and cutting legacy compensation packages. Legacy. That was me. Still, I didn't panic. Not yet. I figured once the big deal closed, the numbers would speak for themselves. But I started keeping notes. Quietly. Rachel's schedule. The team's performance reports. Every odd thing Greg said. I even started forwarding certain emails to a private account. Just in case. Paranoia? Maybe. But it didn't feel like paranoia. It felt like preparation. Then one Sunday, I came home early from a meeting. I had told Rachel I'd be gone till 8. But the client canceled last minute. I didn't call. I thought I'd surprise her and Jacob with ice cream. As I walked through the front door, I heard laughter. But not from Jacob. A man's voice. But confident. Too comfortable. It stopped the moment I stepped in. Rachel was in the kitchen, alone, or so she claimed. The back door to the deck was slightly open. I asked where Jacob was. She said he was at a neighbor's. I said nothing. Just nodded. Put the ice cream in the freezer and left the room. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Rachel showered. The bathroom light flickered under the door. I listened to the sound of running water and started thinking. Not about confrontation. Not about screaming or accusing. But about evidence. About patterns. About how you take down someone who thinks they're smarter than you, without saying a single word. That was the night something in me shifted. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to watch and wait. And when the moment came, I'd burn everything they built on my back, and I'd do it with a smile. It was a Thursday. I remember because I always picked Jacob up from soccer on Thursdays. Except this time, practice was canceled, thunderstorm rolling in. So I got home earlier than usual, and I walked into silence. No TV. No footsteps. Just the low hum of our refrigerator. I called out, "Rachel?" No answer. Her car was in the driveway. Her purse on the counter. But she wasn't in the kitchen, or the living room, or the bedroom. Then I noticed it. The back office door was closed. That door was never closed. I walked over slowly, careful not to make a sound. The wood creaked under my foot, and for a second, I thought about turning around. But something inside me, the same thing that had been whispering watch for weeks, pushed me forward. I didn't knock. I didn't speak. I opened the door, and there she was. Rachel was on a Zoom call, wearing makeup she hadn't worn in weeks, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. And on the screen, a man. Not a coworker. Not a client. Someone familiar. My boss. She didn't see me right away. I stood there, frozen, watching the live proof of what I had feared. The woman I loved, sharing inside jokes and flirty glances with the man who was slowly cutting me out of the company I helped build. When she noticed me, her face drained. She fumbled to end the call. Stammered something about just work stuff. I didn't say a word. I walked out of the room, went upstairs, and closed the door behind me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I sat at the edge of the bed and stared out the window. At the rain hitting the glass. At the streetlights flickering in the distance. And I knew. Everything was connected. Greg, the new CO who kept bypassing me. Rachel, the woman who stopped looking me in the eyes. The sudden job changes. The emotional distance. They were playing a game. Together. And I had been their pawn. But that night, something inside me died. The part of me that wanted to fix it. The man who believed in talking it out. The guy who trusted people to do the right thing. Gone. I sat in silence for hours, going over everything in my head. The timelines. The missed meetings. The canceled dates. The way Greg defended Rachel in that one company dinner. It all made sense now. They weren't just betraying me in love. They were destroying me, professionally, personally, financially. I looked over at my closet. Inside, behind my old military duffel, was a fireproof lockbox. It held a portable SSD, encrypted. Inside that drive were copies of everything. Company contracts, financial statements, internal communications, screenshots, emails, password logs. I had started collecting them weeks ago, just in case. Now, it wasn't just in case. Now it was war. I didn't cry that night. I started planning. Because when someone tries to erase you, the only way to win is to make sure you're the one holding the pen. From the outside, I looked the same. I still brewed the morning coffee. Still packed Jacob's school lunch. Still left for work at 8:15. But inside, something had changed. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. My first step was digital. I installed keyloggers on the home computer and synced Rachel's phone to my old MacBook. She'd forgotten I used to work in cybersecurity. Everything she typed, I saw. Every message she deleted, I retrieved. I gave her just enough space to think I was still in the fog, the silent, tired husband. But I was watching everything. Greg, meanwhile, was being bold. Too bold. Emails started showing up. Executive restructuring, budget consolidation, loyalty review. It was clear he was setting me up to be replaced, likely with someone very close to him. Rachel. So I made moves. Quietly. First, I contacted Lisa, the company's senior HR executive. I didn't tell her everything. Just enough. I think some conflicts of interest are happening. I'll be sending you some documents anonymously. Please don't trace the IP. She understood. Lisa had always been sharp. Next, I went to my lawyer. Not the family one. A different one. One I trusted from my Army days, Sergeant Phil McGraw. Now a private attorney who specialized in corporate sabotage and digital fraud. He listened to everything. Took notes. Asked for proof. Then he leaned back in his chair and said 6 words I'll never forget. You've got them both by the throat. Over the next 3 weeks, we built a silent fortress. Phil helped me gather timestamps, secure financials, log transfers from my personal account to Rachel's, money she claimed was for house repairs, but instead funneled into a side project with Greg. She was setting up her own firm, using trade secrets from my department. And Greg? He'd authorized the transfers without board approval. The legal case was forming like a hurricane on the radar, distant, but inevitable. Meanwhile, I kept smiling, kept hugging Jacob, kept showing up to work. Every night, I reviewed Rachel's texts. She told Greg everything. He's still so clueless. I think I can push for full ownership by July. He won't fight. He's too soft. They had no idea who they were messing with. By week 4, I had enough evidence to not just destroy Greg's position, but expose him to the board for misappropriation, sexual misconduct, and breach of fiduciary duty. Rachel was tied to all of it. But I wasn't done. I set up a meeting with 2 board members privately. Told them I had urgent documentation. Told them they could choose to back me or be complicit in what was coming. They were stunned. One said, "Michael, this could burn the whole place down." I said, "Ugh. It'll clean it." We scheduled a board meeting for the following Monday. I didn't tell Rachel. I didn't tell Greg. I just waited. She thought I'd never fight back. But she forgot, I've been trained to win wars without raising my voice. Here comes the most satisfying and coldly executed part of the story, where the trap finally closes. No shouting. No threats. Just quiet, brutal exposure. The boardroom was silent. 8 men and women sat around the long walnut table, brows furrowed, papers in hand. At the head was Greg, smiling that smug little executive smile. Rachel stood behind him, not part of the board, but advising, as Greg had framed it. I walked in last. Confident. Suit pressed, tie knotted, eyes forward. No one saw it coming. Greg cleared his throat. "Well," he said, trying to sound casual, "before we begin, I'd like to address some structural changes we've proposed for Q3. I raised a hand. Actually, I'd like to start with something else. Something the board hasn't seen yet." The room shifted. You could feel the tension coil. I took a deep breath, reached into my bag, and placed a thick black folder on the table. Then I turned to the assistant behind me and gave a simple nod. The TV screen on the wall lit up. A spreadsheet appeared, company funds, time-stamped, diverted into an LLC registered in Rachel's name. Next slide. Internal emails, forwarded from Greg to Rachel, containing confidential R&D documents from my division. Next, text transcripts. Greg, once Michael's out, will fold his department into ours. Rachel, he won't even know what hit him. The room was dead silent. I clicked one more time. The final slide, a voice recording. Rachel's voice, laughing. He's so predictable. So damn boring. Honestly, the guy's a machine. I don't even think he notices I've already emptied the joint account. I let it play. All 2 minutes of it. Not a word from anyone. Greg's face had turned ghost white. Rachel looked like she'd swallowed acid. Then, from the far end of the table, one board member spoke. "Mr. Monroe, how long have you been collecting this?" I answered quietly. "Long enough." Another leaned forward. This is federal-level fraud. You realize what this means, don't you? I nodded. I've already spoken to my attorney, and law enforcement is aware. But I came to you first, out of respect for this company. The chairman of the board stood up. Greg, Rachel, please leave the room. Greg opened his mouth. Wait, Now. They left. The door closed. The board spent the next 30 minutes in crisis mode, but not with me. With each other. Trying to figure out how to contain the damage without going fully public. I had already made it clear, I didn't want their money. I didn't want revenge that would sink the ship. I wanted justice. And a clean break. By the end of the meeting, the terms were simple. Greg was to resign immediately, pending internal investigation. Rachel was to be referred for federal fraud and corporate espionage. My role would be transitioned to an independent consulting position, with full autonomy, and triple my original pay. And lastly, the board issued a public statement praising my leadership and integrity. I didn't care about the money. What mattered was this. Greg lost his career. Rachel lost her image. And neither one saw it coming, because I never raised my voice. I walked out of that boardroom lighter than I'd felt in years. The courtroom went silent. I played the audio file. And everyone heard what she really thought of me. The months after the boardroom battle were quieter than I expected. No grand celebrations. No vindictive gloating. Just silence. I moved out of the office I had called home for over a decade and found a small apartment overlooking the city skyline. Every morning, I'd sit by the window with a cup of black coffee, watching the sunrise, a reminder that every day was a new start. The company was stable now, under new leadership who valued transparency and teamwork. My former team? They flourished, empowered by the changes I fought to make. I kept in touch with them quietly, proud to see the seeds of something better grow from the ashes. But the real victory wasn't in the promotions or the money. It was in reclaiming myself. For years, I had buried my doubts and fears beneath endless work. I thought success was about climbing higher, pushing harder. But the fire that nearly burned me out was not in the battles I fought for others. It was the war I fought inside. Losing my job, facing betrayal, it broke me. But it also freed me. I learned that the greatest power isn't revenge or justice. It's forgiveness. Forgiving those who wrong you, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. I didn't just rebuild my career, I rebuilt my life. I started volunteering with veterans like me, mentoring younger professionals, and sharing my story. Because sometimes the darkest chapters bring the brightest light. I still think about Greg and Rachel sometimes. Not with anger, but with pity. They lost their integrity and trust, things no amount of money can buy back. As for me, I took back control. Not for them, not for revenge, but for myself. I'm Michael Monroe. And this was my fight. She took everything except my soul. And from that, I rebuilt my life, not for her, not for revenge, but for me. If you felt this story, if you've ever been betrayed but found a way to rise, hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey of strength and justice. Because your story isn't over yet.